I want you to put yourself in the shoes of an emergency dispatcher for just a second.
Oh, that is a tough perspective to take.
Right. But just try to imagine it. It's a Friday evening, November 12th, 2010.
Okay.
You are sitting at the SOS Alarm Center in Skövde, Sweden. And outside, it's, one of those dark, incredibly quiet Scandinavian nights.
Very isolated.
Exactly. A thin November rain is falling. You're at your desk, going through the motions of an ordinary shift.
Just waiting for the usual calls.
Yeah, like you're expecting maybe a minor traffic accident on the wet roads or, I don't know, a medical call, maybe a kitchen fire.
Standard Friday night stuff.
Right. And then the phone rings. It's exactly 19.12. You answer it with your standard practice greeting. But on the other end of the line, you don't hear panic.
Which is usually the first thing you hear.
Exactly. You don't hear sirens or crying or like the chaos of an emergency in the background. Instead, you hear a man's voice, and the voice is entirely unsettlingly calm.
Just completely flat.
Completely flat. Conversational almost. And he says to you, when you get here, you don't have to jump on me.
Wow. That is the absolute opposite of what you are trained to process in that chair.
Right. It just throws you off.
Because a dispatcher, they are listening for the spikes in cortisol, the adrenaline, the urgency.
Yeah.
And when a caller lacks all of that, it immediately signals a profound detachment from whatever reality they are standing in.
And then he pauses. There's this heavy, deliberate silence over the line. And he says, I have woken up now.
It's chilling.
So you ask him to explain what happened, and he delivers a line that I just cannot stop thinking about. He says, I have done something, but I have no idea that I've actually done it.
That is a statement that captures like a chilling psychological paradox.
Oh, so?
Well, he is offering a full confession, right? He's acknowledging that an event has occurred while simultaneously distancing his own consciousness from the execution of that event.
So you, as the dispatcher, ask if anyone is injured. He says yes. You ask how badly. Another pause. And then he just says, she is dead.
Just like that.
Just like that. And that call, it didn't just trigger a murder investigation. It triggered a 14-year collision between unimaginable evil and a Swedish justice system built entirely on the philosophy of compassion.
Which is such a complex intersection.
It really is. So welcome to today's deep dive. Today, we are immersing ourselves in the 2010 case of the man the media would eventually dub the Skara Cannibal.
His name was Jimmy Isakin.
Right, Jimmy Isakin, who later actually changed his name to Isakin Drabbad. And our mission today is to examine the absolute limits of a society that prioritizes care over custody.
Because we have to ask what happens when a system designed entirely for rehabilitation meets a person who is capable of extreme ritualistic violence.
Exactly. And it forces us to confront the ethical dilemma at the heart of modern forensic psychiatry.
We really have to look at how institutions measure recovery and, more importantly, how a highly manipulative individual can actually weaponize the very human rights designed to protect them.
Yeah, that's the core of it. And I just want to warn you, the listener, we are dealing with details today that are doubly, deeply disturbing.
Yes, very graphic.
We're going to maintain a somber, analytical atmosphere.
Yeah.
But the facts of this case are horrific. They are, however, absolutely crucial for understanding the ethical blind spots we're going to unpack.
You really can't understand the systemic failure without understanding the severity of the crime.
Right. So let's go back to that dispatcher. The call ends. The police are immediately dispatched to Valhallagatan 13D in Skara.
Now, Skara is a very small, quiet town in Västra Götaland. It has a population of maybe, about 20,000 people.
It's situated right between two large lakes, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the kind of place where violent crime of this magnitude is practically unheard of.
So the first patrol unit arrives within minutes. They pull up to the address. And the sources point out how utterly ordinary this building is.
Just a standard apartment block?
Yeah, a nondescript 3-story residential structure. It's got a pale facade. There's absolutely nothing on the outside that suggests what is waiting for them on the inside.
Which really heightens the tension for those responding officers.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Because they have no idea what they're walking into. Is the caller armed? Is it an ambush?
Right, they're entering a total informational void.
Exactly.
So they walk up to apartment 13D. The door is unlocked.
Of course.
They step inside. They have their flashlights drawn because the apartment is dimly lit. And the very first thing that hits them is not a visual. It's a sensory shock.
It's the smell.
It's a smell.
Yeah, they describe the metallic tang of blood, which officers are unfortunately familiar with, but it's mixed with something deeply incongruous.
The smell of fried meat.
Right. And an herbal scent.
Yeah, homegrown cannabis. The officers move through the apartment, and in the living room, they find the caller, 32-year-old Jimmy Isaacson.
What is he doing?
He is just sitting there. He doesn't run. He doesn't resist. He literally stands up and extends his hands.
Like he's ready for the cuffs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like he has been waiting for this exact moment his entire life.
And that means he is entirely compliant.
FA.
He has essentially stage managed his own arrest.
He created this passive, non-threatening posture that starkly contrasts with whatever violence just occurred.
Right.
So they secure him, and then they begin to search the apartment. In the kitchen, they find a frying pan still sitting on the stove.
Oh, this place is just awful.
It's awful. Inside the pan are pieces of human flesh. It had been cooked in vegetable oil, with salt, and sprinkled with cannabis leaves.
So methodical.
And on the kitchen counter, positioned deliberately, upright, is the severed head of a woman.
And the positioning there is a vital forensic detail.
Why is that?
Because that head wasn't dropped in a panic or tossed aside in a frenzy. It was placed.
It was a constructed tableau.
Exactly. It shows intent and order.
So they move to the bedroom, and there, on the floor, is the nude, headless body of 40-year-old Helle Christensen. And the mattress she had been lying on wasn't just blood-soaked.
No.
It had been meticulously, almost surgically sliced open with a blade.
And this is where the contradiction really peaks.
Well, hold on. I am struggling with this.
Okay.
Let's unpack this paradox right now, because this is where my mind just hits a wall.
Okay, let's break it down.
Usually a crime of this magnitude, decapitation, dismemberment, it's chaotic. It's a frenzy. It's an explosion of uncontrollable rage.
Typically, yes.
But this scene feels like a deeply unsettling stage play. I mean, if he is completely out of his mind, experiencing a psychotic break, how does he know to use vegetable oil and salt?
That requires a palate.
Right. That requires executive function. Yeah. How do we reconcile the sheer madness of the act with the terrifying orderliness of placing the head upright on the counter and calmly waiting for the police?
Well, that is the fundamental mistake we often make when we hear the word psychosis.
What do you mean?
We tend to picture a raving, thrashing lunatic who has lost all motor control and logic, like someone out of a horror movie.
Right, someone totally detached from the physical world.
But clinical psychosis can actually run on parallel tracks with highly organized procedural memory.
Procedural memory?
Yes. Your brain's basal ganglia, which handles habitual actions like cooking, turning on a stove, or using a phone, can still function perfectly well.
Even in a break?
Even if your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that handles reality testing and moral reasoning, is completely flooded with dopamine-driven delusions.
Wow. So you can be completely delusional but still know how to cook.
Exactly. You can genuinely believe you are a passenger in your own body or that a demon is instructing you, but still remember exactly how to chop an onion or season a pan.
So the mechanics of daily life are still intact, but the reality they are applied to is completely warped.
Precisely. And that tension between the methodical execution of the crime and the profound dissociation of the perpetrator is what makes this case a nightmare for psychiatric evaluators.
I can see why.
Because how do you judge a mind that is simultaneously broken and chillingly organized?
Yeah, Yanisa Diary documented a gathering storm of paranoia. But what the psychiatric system failed to understand is that when a storm like that finally breaks, it doesn't look like chaos.
It looks methodical.
Yes. And to understand how this highly organized nightmare materialized, we have to look backward at the two lives that collided at Valhallagatan 13D.
Because neither Jimmy Isaacson nor Helle Christensen arrived in that room by accident?
No. They were both individuals who had spent their lives falling through the cracks of various social safety nets. Let's start with Jimmy Isaacson.
Okay.
He was born in 1978 in Köping, which is an industrial town, but he didn't stay there long. By the time he was 2, his family moved, and the sources tell us his records from that point on are incredibly fragmented.
And that fragmentation is key.
But the overarching theme of his life is clear. His childhood was defined by the architecture of institutions. Foster homes, youth detention centers, treatment facilities.
When a child grows up bouncing between jurisdictions like that, they don't develop a stable foundation. They develop a sprawling, disjointed case file.
And nobody reads the whole thing.
Exactly. And that fragmentation is incredibly dangerous. One facility might note a behavioral issue, another might note a depressive episode.
But they don't communicate.
Right, because the files rarely talk to each other seamlessly, so no single clinician ever gets to see the complete psychological picture.
And as he drifts into adulthood, the record just expands. Drug convictions, petty theft, Small violences across southern and central Sweden.
Just a steady escalation.
Yeah, but mixed in with the criminal record is a growing psychiatric file. And this file notes things like auditory hallucinations, dissociation.
He talked about presences in the room, right? Voices instructing him.
Yes. But as you said, he was a ghost in the machine. By 2009, he's 30 years old. He has a 9-year-old daughter named Jamie Lee from a previous relationship who lives with her mother.
So he's not entirely unmoored. He has a child out there.
He does, but he has no job, no permanent address, just a downward trajectory. And then he meets
Helle Christensen, 40 years old, and she carried an equally profound, though very different vulnerability.
She was a mother of 5 children, and all 5 of them were either in foster care or with relatives because of her own struggles with mental health.
That is an immense burden for a mother to carry.
Her life was marked by hardship and systemic failures. And she meets Jimmy at a psychiatric clinic in Borås.
Ah, Borås. It's one of those intermediate facilities, right?
Yeah, for people not quite sick enough for a hospital, but not well enough for society.
It's a tragic, almost magnetic dynamic. You have her profound loneliness meeting his deep woundedness.
Like 2 drowning people grabbing each other.
Exactly. When an individual is that isolated and carrying the immense grief of being separated from her children, any warmth or connection can feel like salvation.
Even if that connection is fundamentally dangerous.
Especially then, because the danger is masked by the intensity of being seen.
So they fall in love, and by the autumn of 2010, they move to Skara together, to Valhallagatan. They rent the apartment in Jimmy's mother's name.
So they don't even have their own independent lease.
No. And it's barely furnished, just a mattress on the bedroom floor. But they had a dream.
What did they want to do?
They talked about opening a tattoo and piercing shop right out of the apartment.
That detail really highlights their underlying desire for a normal life.
It does.
They wanted to build a future, a business, a shared identity, despite the immense baggage they both carried.
But behind that door, the illusion of a future was slowly giving way to an escalating nightmare. And we know this not from witness testimony, but from Helle herself.
They found her diary, right?
Yes. Investigators found a small, worn diary among her belongings after the crime.
And analyzing that diary offers a profound look into the psychology of domestic abuse.
The handwriting itself actually grows increasingly unsteady as the entries progress,
giving investigators a visual representation of her deteriorating environment and mental state.
The quotes from this diary are just haunting. She writes, he talks about punishments, about all the evil.
Oh, wow.
And then she writes the lie that has kept so many victims trapped. She says, I can handle it because I love him.
That is the classic savior complex, often seen in abusive dynamics.
Explain that.
The victim believes that their love is the only thing standing between the abuser and total darkness. It's the belief that if she's just patient enough, if she endures enough, she can cure the monster.
But that's an impossible burden.
It places a lethal burden on the victim.
And she knew it wasn't working.
Yeah.
Her sister had seen bruises. Once, Helle's leg was broken in 3 places.
3 places?
Yes, an injury she completely deflected questions about, obviously to protect him. And in the final weeks, she actually went to a librarian at the local public library.
A librarian. That shows how isolated she was.
Exactly. She secretly pleaded for help finding a women's shelter. But she begged the librarian not to call the police.
She wanted to escape the immediate physical danger, but she still harbored that fatal hope for his redemption.
She just couldn't turn him in.
She wasn't ready to sever the tie completely or bring the crushing weight of the authorities down on the man she still desperately wanted to fix.
You know, I can't help but point out the horrific irony of the street they lived on, Valhallagatan.
Valhalla.
Yeah, Valhalla is the great hall in Norse mythology where slain warriors go. She was literally living in a hall of the slain, documenting her own descent.
That diary proves that November 12th wasn't a sudden out-of-nowhere snap.
Right.
This was a slow, escalating terror. The psychology of the diary is critical for the legal case later on.
Because it shows premeditation.
It shows a pattern of intimidation and fear that predates the supposed psychotic break. It wasn't a singular lightning strike of madness. It was a storm that had been gathering for months, with clear behavioral indicators.
Helle knew the darkness was growing. She tried to navigate it. But neither she nor the librarian nor the psychiatric system could have ever anticipated the ritualistic horror of how that storm would finally break.
No one could have predicted the specific, gruesome nature of it.
So let's look at the exact timeline of November 12th, because his precision that day is what shatters his eventual legal defense.
Walk us through it. What actually happened in the hours leading up to this?
It started incredibly mundane. Around noon, they wake up, they go shopping, he buys beer and a bottle of Jägermeister.
A lot of alcohol.
Yeah. And Helle buys groceries for meals they will obviously never eat. They return to the apartment. Neighbors report hearing absolutely nothing unusual all afternoon.
Just a quiet Friday.
Right. Between 5:00 p.m. and 7:00 p.m., Helle goes to lie down on the mattress in the bedroom. She is in a completely vulnerable, relaxed state.
And this is when the methodology kicks in.
Jimmy takes a knife. He walks into the bedroom. He cuts the fabric of the mattress open, almost like preparing a surgical field.
That detail is so specific.
He positions himself above her, and he slits her throat, a deep, decisive cut that causes almost instant death.
She didn't have time to fight or scream.
The pillow absorbed the blood, muffling the scene.
The swiftness of the attack is terrifying. And from a forensic standpoint, what follows is a multi-stage process of violation and butchery.
He cuts her clothes off, and he engages in an act of necrophilia.
Mm.
But the forensic reports note a bizarre detail: he did not ejaculate.
Mm.
After that, he leaves the room and comes back with a saw and an axe. Household tools. He severs her head. He carries it to the kitchen sink.
And this is where it gets truly macabre.
He actually told police later he drained it like you would drain meat.
Treating a human being like livestock.
He then goes back to the body and specifically selects portions of flesh from her right arm and left leg. He takes those pieces to the frying pan, adds the oil, the salt, the cannabis, and cooks it.
And he eats it.
He eats it. When you lay out that sequence, violence, sexual violation, dismemberment, culinary preparation, and consumption, it requires a terrifying amount of sustained focus.
It really does. It's not a blur of violence.
When he is interrogated at the Skövde police station 2 days later, he is perfectly calm.
Even then.
Even then. Now, a blood sample taken shortly after his arrest shows he had a blood alcohol concentration of 1.35.
Okay, that's intoxicated but not unconscious.
Right. He also had tramadol in his system. Can you explain the pharmacological impact of that specific combination? Because people take tramadol for back pain. They don't usually eat their partners.
No, that's a crucial distinction. Tramadol is a synthetic opioid, but unlike morphine, it also functions as a serotonin-norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor.
So an SNRI.
Yes. It acts on the brain similarly to some antidepressants. When you abuse tramadol, especially at high doses, it lowers the brain's seizure threshold.
Okay.
When you mix that with a massive amount of alcohol, which is a central nervous system depressant that causes profound disinhibition, you are creating a highly volatile neurochemical cocktail.
That's like pouring gasoline on a fire.
Exactly. For someone with an underlying psychotic or schizoaffective vulnerability, that combination can absolutely act as a catalyst for a massive psychiatric event.
But the toxicologists were clear. It does not cause a complete loss of voluntary action. He wasn't blacked out.
He was aware of his movements.
And in the interrogation room, he says things that sound almost rehearsed. I am most dangerous when I do not take my medication.
Laying the groundwork for a defense.
He claims, someone else acted in me. I was watching. It felt like there were several people in the room.
Which is a classic description of a dissociative psychotic episode.
But when they ask him the ultimate question, why did you cook and eat her? He pauses. And he gives the answer that will define the case. He says, because I was hungry.
That is an evasion disguised as an answer.
Evasion.
Yes. It attempts to normalize the cannibalism by equating it to a basic mammalian biological urge. It strips the act of its profound psychological deviance and tries to shut down further inquiry.
But then investigators look at what was openly displayed on the living room shelf in that apartment. A collection of serial killer DVDs.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Green River Killer, The Wonderland Murders.
Yeah.
They weren't hidden. They were just part of the entertainment library.
Well, that introduces a completely different angle.
Exactly. Was he experiencing a psychotic break? Or was he emulating the media he consumed? Was he an observer in his own body? Or was he playing a role he had studied?
It's the classic question of madness versus malice.
And this brings us to the trial in 2011 at the Skara District Court. And here's where we hit the core tension of this entire deep dive. The central debate of the trial wasn't guilt. He confessed. The evidence was overwhelming.
The debate was about criminal responsibility.
Right. To understand this, we have to look closely at Chapter 31 of the Swedish Penal Code.
Yes, which dictates how the state handles mental illness in the justice system.
Walk us through how it compares to other systems.
Well, in many jurisdictions, like the US or the UK, if you are found legally insane, You might go to a secure hospital instead of a prison, but the focus remains heavily on confinement and public safety.
It's still a form of custody.
Right. But the Swedish philosophy is radically distinct. The system operates on the premise that offenders who commit crimes while suffering from a serious mental disorder lack the moral agency required to be held criminally culpable.
So they can't be blamed.
Exactly. Prison is viewed as punitive, time-limited, and ultimately useless for a broken brain. Instead, they are sentenced to forensic psychiatric care.
Which is therapeutic and potentially indefinite. The goal shifts completely from retribution to rehabilitation and risk management.
Yes. Society is essentially stating that a person in a state of severe psychosis cannot be punished because the person wasn't truly the one driving the action the illness was.
So a team of psychiatrists evaluates Isakin. They look at his history, the crime scene, the interrogation, and they conclude, yes, he suffered from a severe mental disorder. Schizoaffective disorder made worse by drugs and stopping his meds.
They say the voices compelled him to kill.
The defense argues he is a severely ill man who needs treatment, not a murderer who needs punishment. And the prosecution doesn't even really dispute the medical findings.
No.
No, they just argue for the strictest possible conditions of care. The verdict comes down. He is sentenced to Karsudden Hospital, a maximum security psychiatric facility with a special discharge review.
Which means a court has to approve any future release.
Exactly. And Helle's family, her parents and 5 children, are awarded 75,000 Swedish krona each in damages.
An acknowledgement of their catastrophic loss, though obviously a financial sum means nothing in the face of such horror.
I have to push back hard against the psychiatric conclusion here.
I understand why you would.
I understand the philosophy of care. I really do.
Yeah.
And I understand the pharmacology of tramadol. But to look at a man who committed an act of cannibalistic butchery, surrounded by serial killer media, who calmly told the dispatcher, "You don't have to jump on me," and to officially declare, "This is not a monster, this is a patient."
It's a tough pill to swallow.
Society is declaring that the most horrific act imaginable is merely a symptom.
It is a radical commitment to the medical model of criminal behavior.
Is it too radical?
Well, the system looked at the totality of his fragmented life, the underlying schizophrenia, the drug abuse, and decided that the mechanism of the crime was illness, not pure malice.
But here's where the application of that philosophy becomes honestly enraging. Because once Jimmy Isakin got inside that hospital, he didn't act like a patient seeking recovery.
No, he didn't.
He didn't retreat into quiet rehabilitation to grapple with the horror of what he had done. He began to act like a celebrity.
He weaponized his notoriety.
Yes. In 2016, he officially applies to change his name. He wants to drop Jimmy Isakin and become Isakin Drabbad. Now, Drabbad translates roughly to infected or afflicted.
That is highly unusual.
And he didn't just file the paperwork. He sent a threatening letter to the patent office, warning them they were messing with the wrong guy if they denied his request.
The choice of that specific name is a massive psychological red flag.
What does it tell you?
He later explained that he chose it because he considered himself a disease upon society.
A disease.
He is adopting a moniker, not out of remorse and not out of a desire to distance himself from his horrific past. He is adopting it out of pride. He is branding himself as a contagion.
He is leaning into the villain persona, and he finds a co-star.
Oh, yes.
In 2011, less than a year after arriving at the maximum security Karsudden Hospital, he meets another patient, Helle Christensen. The media already had a name for her, the vampire woman.
She was a highly publicized patient. In 2010, she slit a 24-year-old man's throat in a Stockholm suburb.
Did he survive?
She survived, but during the investigation, police found a blog where she posted photos of herself with blood smeared around her mouth, holding knives and chainsaws.
So the Skara Cannibal and the vampire woman meet in the psychiatric ward. They recognize something in each other. And on November 13, 2011, almost exactly 1 year to the day after he murdered Helle, they announced their engagement.
You can imagine the absolute media frenzy.
Oh, it was a circus.
It is a gothic romance playing out in real time inside a maximum security hospital. The tabloids globally couldn't get enough of it. But for the hospital administration, this is an operational nightmare.
I have to add.
You have 2 highly dangerous individuals with a shared, documented fascination for blood and lethal violence, mutually reinforcing each other's deepest pathologies.
And it gets worse. Because the hospital, adhering strictly to the rights of patients, provided access to a computer.
Why would they do that?
Patient rights. And Drabbad and Gustafsson use it to start a blog together. an anti-human blog, as he described it. They used this platform to answer reader questions.
Engaging with fans.
Yes, and they mocked their crimes. Drabbad actually wrote in one post, "Most people say they would never take someone else's life, but have you done it? It's not a big deal anymore."
That is just blatant sadism.
He praised Viking and Spartan warrior cultures. He expressed a deep hatred for humanity, saying survival of the fittest was the only moral principle.
Consider the absurdity of that situation. He is operating from a secure facility, costing the state immense resources, supposedly receiving intensive, stabilizing psychiatric care, and yet he is broadcasting a philosophy of pure, violent self-interest to the world.
The public outrage was massive. And to impartially report on the political fallout here, this actually reached the highest levels of the Swedish government.
It became a national issue.
Yes. The Sweden Democrats, a right-wing populist party, filed a formal motion in Parliament Motion 2016-17.855. They cited Drabbad's case specifically.
What were they arguing?
Their argument was that the system was allowing violent offenders to traumatize victims' families and spread harmful ideologies under the guise of treatment. They demanded severe restrictions on internet access and forensic psychiatry.
And what happened?
Eventually, the blog was taken down.
Regardless of the political origin of the motion, it highlights a core vulnerability in the legal framework. The rules of these hospitals were designed for ordinary psychiatric patients suffering from depression or standard schizophrenia. They were not designed for media-savvy predators who view their hospitalization as a platform to amplify their sadism.
And he proved he didn't even need the internet to exploit the system. He started an art business.
From inside the
hospital. Using toilet paper, toothpicks, and thread, he crafted these twisted little voodoo dolls. Crude, sinister figurines.
Okay, weird, but maybe harmless.
No, the materials he added to them are what made them truly abhorrent. He used his own blood, his own hair, and his own semen.
What?
He incorporated his bodily fluids into these dolls, signed them Skara Cannibal, and used intermediaries on the outside to sell them on online auction sites.
He is literally monetizing his own biological connection to his crime. He knows the market value of his infamy, and he is manufacturing artifacts for murderabilia collectors.
If you are listening to this right now, driving in your car, doing the dishes, and you are screaming, "Why didn't they just take his art supplies away?" You have to understand the rigid legal framework these doctors are operating under. How does an institution allow a convicted Campbell to run a business selling semen-soaked toilet paper dolls?
This is the exact paradox of therapeutic jurisprudence.
Explain that.
In a system dedicated to patient rehabilitation, patients retain certain fundamental human rights, including the right to creative expression or occupational therapy. The administration was paralyzed by their own rulebook.
Because it wasn't a weapon.
Right. Toilet paper and toothpicks are not contraband items. You can't ban a patient from having bodily fluids.
So while the public is watching this circus, the blog, the vampire romance, the blood dolls, they're naturally horrified. But what the public didn't fully realize was that behind closed doors, by the hospital's own metrics, Drabbad was actually considered a success story.
A success story.
Yes, the system was beginning to loosen its grip on him.
This is where we have to critically examine how institutions measure progress. In forensic psychiatry, progress is often quantified through rigid checklists.
Like what?
Is the patient attending group therapy? Yes. Are they taking their prescribed medication without a fight? Yes. Have they physically assaulted staff this week? No.
It's like passing a car's emissions test while the transmission is falling out. He was hitting the specific metrics they were measuring, but the core engine of his pathology, his manipulation, his narcissism was completely unchecked.
And the rewards for hitting those checkboxes were astonishing.
In 2015, just 5 years after he cooked and ate a woman, he was granted weekly 4-hour furloughs. He was allowed to leave the hospital grounds and spend time unsupervised in the nearby town of Katrinholm.
Unsupervised time in the community. For a man with his specific history of ritualistic violence,
It was wild.
it is a massive escalation of freedom based on superficial behavioral compliance within a highly controlled environment.
And in 2016, they expanded it even further. They gave him a 3-day furlough to attend a wedding in the community.
A wedding.
Yes, the Skara Cannibal spent a weekend eating, drinking, and socializing at a wedding. But the system's metrics were fundamentally flawed, because a 2017 medical report revealed that during one of these furloughs, he relapsed. He used
Oh.
illegal substances. He abandoned his drug treatment program.
Which is the exact trigger substance abuse mixed with his underlying neurochemistry that led to the psychotic break and the murder of Helle Christensen in the first place.
So he's repeating the pattern.
Yes. The chief doctor even noted in his file that his risk of aggressive impulse breakthroughs had risen sharply.
You would think that relapse would be the absolute end of his freedoms. But then a massive scandal breaks inside the hospital itself. In 2017, it is revealed that Drabbad had formed a romantic relationship with a female caregiver at Sutton.
This is a catastrophic security failure on multiple levels. The power imbalance in a psychiatric facility is absolute.
How does that even happen?
Manipulation. But for a staff member to become romantically involved with a patient, especially a patient with a documented history of lethal violence against intimate partners, it is the ultimate red flag regarding institutional control.
The caregiver resigns, but the relationship continues on the outside, and Drabbad actually applies for a furlough so he can leave the hospital and marry her.
It demonstrates an incredible level of predatory manipulation on his part and a terrifying vulnerability in the staff trained to manage him.
Finally, the administrative court steps in. They deny the furlough, they cite escape risks, the danger of contraband being introduced into the facility, and they actually place a restraining order on the former caregiver.
A rare moment of sanity.
It was a rare moment of institutional caution. But I have to ask, how does a man who relapses on illegal drugs and successfully seduces and manipulates his own caregiver still remain on a trajectory toward eventual release? Are the metrics for rehabilitation completely divorced from common sense?
What you're seeing is the dangerous bureaucratic momentum of psychiatric care. Once a patient is placed on a step-down pathway moving from high security toward lower security, the institution becomes deeply invested in that narrative of progress.
They want him to succeed.
They focus on the incremental successes and often rationalize or minimize the setbacks. The relapse and the caregiver relationship should have fundamentally reset his evaluation to zero.
But they didn't.
But in a system strictly dedicated to the eventual release of the patient, sometimes the broader, darker behavioral patterns, like an unparalleled ability to manipulate the people treating him, are viewed as minor clinical hurdles rather than absolute stop signs.
While Drabbad is playing the system, manipulating the staff, and making headlines, there was someone else involved in this story, whose life was quietly, painfully unfolding in the shadow of his horrific legacy.
His daughter.
His daughter, Jamie Lee Arrow.
The collateral damage of this case extends far beyond the immediate victim.
Jamie Lee was only 9 years old when her father murdered Helle. She actually knew Helle. She visited the apartment at Valhallagatan.
That's incredibly tragic.
And during her childhood, she received gifts from her father. Before the crime, he was already making those twisted little voodoo dolls. Not the ones with blood and semen that he sold online later, but early versions, precursors to the madness.
Just little string figures.
Yeah, and she kept them in her room because she was a kid and they were from her dad.
It's heartbreaking. She spent her entire childhood and adolescence trying to reconcile the cognitive dissonance of her reality, trying to marry the father who tucked her into bed with the monster the media called the Skara Cannibal.
In 2023, she published a memoir to process this immense trauma called The Skara Cannibal's Daughter. She described him as both her savior and her worst nightmare.
Writing that must have been agonizing.
And then, in 2024, she made a decision that is almost unimaginable to me. She agreed to participate in an investigation discovery documentary series called Evil Lives Here, The Killer Speaks.
And she confronted him.
She sat down for an on-camera reunion and confrontation with her father.
An incredibly brave, but incredibly risky psychological undertaking. Confronting an abuser or a violent parent rarely yields the closure victims are seeking.
They hadn't seen each other in 4 years. Drabbad walks into the room. He sees his daughter and he starts to cry. He crosses the room. He hugs her.
A highly emotional moment.
And Jamie Lee admits that in that brief moment, she felt hope. She thought maybe the system worked. Maybe he has changed. Maybe he is the loving father I always wanted. But it was an illusion.
It usually is.
Because over the next 2 hours, as she starts to press him about the murder, about his motives, his demeanor completely shifts. The tears vanish. The warmth is gone. Jamie Lee said his true colors started to show again.
What did he say?
He delivers 2 statements to her on camera that are deeply disturbing. First, he looks toward the camera lens, not even directly at her, and says, "I see you from hell, and I'm sorry for that."
Let's analyze the phrasing of that statement. I see you from hell.
What does that mean to you?
That is not an apology for taking a life. That is not remorse for leaving Helle's 5 children without a mother. It's an acknowledgement of his own damn state. He is centering his own experience of being a monster. It is profoundly narcissistic.
And then she asks him point blank why he did it. Why did he kill Helle? And he abandons the entire narrative of the psychotic break.
He drops the defense.
Completely. He doesn't blame the voices. He doesn't blame the hallucinations. He says, it was a logical decision in my brain then. I saw no other way out to get psychiatric help.
That statement is explosive.
It destroys the entire legal defense. If he killed Helle as a calculated, logical move just to get himself institutionalized, that means it wasn't temporary psychosis.
It means it was a strategy.
It means the Swedish system just spent 14 years and millions of krona rehabilitating a man who planned a cannibalistic murder as a networking strategy to get medical care.
Exactly. It reframes the murder from a tragic symptom of uncontrollable illness to an act of cold, utilitarian manipulation. Now, we don't know if this new explanation is the actual truth of what happened in 2010.
You think you might be lying now?
Or if it is just a rationalization he constructed after the fact to make his loss of control seem like a deliberate choice, which is common in narcissists who cannot abide the idea that they were out of control.
Right.
But either way, it completely shatters the foundation of his psychiatric evaluation. If he can turn the manipulation on and off so quickly, how can any psychiatrist truly evaluate his core risk?
The psychological whiplash Jamie Lee experienced in that room must have been agonizing. And the whiplash didn't stop when the cameras turned off. She tried to keep in touch with him for a few months after the filming.
Still holding out hope.
She was desperately trying to hold on to that initial hug. But then he sent her a text message, a long, twisted, sick message, where he explicitly threatened her and her family.
Oh, God.
He told her there would be severe consequences if she ever contacted him again.
And that text message was the final fracture.
But Jamie Lee said it actually brought her relief. It was the absolute proof she needed that the man she wanted to be her father was dead or never existed in the first place.
Yeah.
The man who sent that text was the Skara Cannibal.
So what did she do?
She blocked his number. She finally locked the door on her father.
But the tragic irony is that just as she finally shut him out of her life to protect herself, the Swedish legal system opened its doors to him entirely.
This brings us to late 2024. The administrative court makes a monumental decision. Isakin Drabbad's care is officially converted from inpatient forensic psychiatry to open, community-based supervision.
He is released from Karsudden Hospital.
He is moved into a training apartment, a transitional living setup in an unnamed Swedish municipality. He is no longer behind locked doors. He is living among the public.
Now, his freedom does come with a strict list of conditions.
Right.
He has to sleep at the apartment. He has to maintain regular psychiatric contacts. He has to provide urine samples on demand to prove he is clean. He must accept social services support. And he must maintain absolute abstinence from alcohol and illegal drugs and only take his approved medications.
So the court is essentially declaring that his treatment is complete enough that his risk of reoffending can be managed outside of a locked facility.
That's the rationale.
The public reaction to this release, as you can imagine, was polarized, and it really encapsulates the core philosophical debate of this entire deep dive. Okay. There are two very distinct views on the Isakin Drabbad case. View number one is that the system worked.
The argument for view number one is that a severely ill man committed an unthinkable act while entirely in the grip of psychosis. Instead of throwing him in a dungeon to rot, society treated him. They stabilized his brain chemistry over 14 years.
Slowly?
They slowly, methodically reintegrated him. And the undeniable fact is, he hasn't physically harmed anyone since 2010. By the strict metrics of forensic psychiatry, the goal of risk reduction through medical care was achieved.
Proponents of this view see it as a triumph of a humane society.
Yes.
But view number two is systemic naivety. The argument that a manipulative predator weaponized his rights at every single turn. He blogged hatred, he sold his bodily fluids for profit, he seduced staff, he abused drugs on furlough, he threatened his own daughter on camera.
It's a long list of red flags.
And now, he is unleashed on an unsuspecting public, and our safety relies purely on an honor system that he will keep taking his pills and providing clean urine.
Both views draw on the exact same set of facts, and that is why this case is a Rorschach test for how you view justice, rehabilitation, and human nature.
I have to zero in on the unanswered questions here because they're keeping me awake. We know how he killed Helle. We know the timeline, the tools, the process. But we still do not know why he ate her.
Cannibalism is extraordinarily rare in criminology.
Even among the most severely mentally ill offenders.
Yes, it requires a sustained, intimate engagement with the body that goes far beyond a momentary loss of control.
Because I was hungry is an evasion. And if the psychiatric experts who evaluated him for over a decade cannot point to the exact neurological or psychological root of that specific cannibalistic urge, how can they confidently say to the public that it won't happen again?
They can't. Psychiatry cannot offer absolute certainty. It can only offer a risk assessment based on probability and historical data.
And that's terrifying.
And this is where we have to contextualize the burden of risk. In the Swedish system, the rights of the patient to eventually rejoin society are paramount.
Right.
But the devastating consequences of failure, if the assessment is wrong, if he stops his meds, if he uses tramadol again, those consequences will not be borne by the judges who signed his release papers. They will not be borne by the psychiatrists who checked his boxes.
Who will bail them?
The consequences will be borne by the ordinary citizen living next door to him. The burden of risk is entirely outsourced to the public.
So what does that leave us with? Let's contrast two very different scenes right now. Right now, in some anonymous, bustling Swedish town, a 47-year-old Isakin Drabbad is freely walking the streets.
He's shopping at local stores.
He is breathing the same air as ordinary citizens. He could be standing behind someone in line for coffee. And then there is the silent, empty legacy of Valhallagatan 13D.
The apartment has been cleaned.
Repainted, rented to new tenants who probably have no idea what happened in the kitchen where they make their own morning coffee.
The media moves on to the next tragedy. The institution moves on to the next patient. The perpetrator moves on to the rest of his life.
But we cannot lose sight of the true victim in this narrative. In all the intense debates about diagnoses and patient rights and the ethical blind spots of institutions, there is a voice that is permanently absent.
Helle Christensen.
We have to remember the 40-year-old woman who loved a broken man and hoped she could fix him. We have to remember her 5 children who had to grow up without their mother, inheriting a trauma that will span generations.
We have to remember the dream of a tattoo shop that died on a bloody, sliced-open mattress.
The stark, inescapable reality at the center of this deep dive is this. A woman was brutally murdered and consumed, and her killer is free.
It forces us to continually ask what a society owes to its victims compared to what it owes to its most broken, violent offenders.
And that leads to the final, chilling question I want you, the listener, to mull over as we end this deep dive. We are often told that society's greatness is judged by how it treats its worst, most damaged offenders. But when a system built on endless, institutional compassion demands that ordinary citizens accept a man who literally consumed another human being back into their neighborhoods, have we achieved ultimate humanity? Or have we just engineered our own vulnerability?
As the ultimate test of the system.
What happens when the medication stops? And more importantly, what happens when the Skara Cannibal gets hungry again? Back on that rainy Friday in 2010, the dispatcher heard a calm voice say, "I have done something, but I have no idea that I have actually done it." Is it possible the system is telling us the exact same thing?